Hello, YouTube. Yes. Oh, hello, everybody. Good to be back with you. You might all be wondering, then again, you might not, but some of you might be wondering where I've been. If you think back to the last video or two that I put up, I did say I'll be back on the channel soon. That is, if Iceland didn't kill me. Well, it very nearly did. Yeah. I developed one monster chest infection while I was over there, and on top of that, I caught bloody COVID. Yes, I damn well did. And God, I thought I was dying. My O2 sats were on the Tuesday and the Wednesday and the Thursday and the Friday when we came back. My O2 sats were somewhat reminiscent of those of a corpse. They were in the 80s, and oh Jesus, I was just real bad. And but anyway, here we go. 6 weeks have passed. I've been on 5.5 weeks worth of antibiotics, and I'm just about back in the land of the living. So in this video, I'm going to look at this particular image. Kindly sent in by one of my Patreon members, Gary, of a bloody tree rat, grey squirrel, sat on a fence post, shot on a D850 with a 200-500 f5.6 Nikon zoom lens. And we're going to have a look at this perennial question I keep getting asked. Andy, is Lightroom any good? And is Raw Therapee or DarkTable better than, Raw Therapee or DarkTable? Which one's best? Answer, I can't say. It all depends on the image. But anyway, we're going to have a look at processing this image in all three of those aforementioned raw processors. Yes, we are. You looking forward to it? Yeah? Cool. Let's do it. Okay, so here we are in DarkTable with the image. Nothing been done to it at all. That's what it looks like when you open it in DarkTable. That's what it looks like when we open it in Raw Therapee. It looks a bit blurry, but it isn't, not really, as you can see. And what does it look like in Lightroom? Jesus crikey! Yeah, God, Lightroom's bloody horrible defaults. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off in Lightroom, and I strongly suggest those of you who don't use Lightroom stick around and watch this bit, otherwise you'll sort of miss a third of the answer to the perennial question, won't you? So stick around, watch it, even if you don't use it. And the first thing I'm going to do with this image is get rid of the contrast. So I'm going to do one of my normal process version swaps, and then I'm going to double click on the word exposure and put all the exposure back that I've just taken out. Notice I'm not putting the contrast back. Why am I not putting contrast back? Well, this is the thing you have to realise about contrast. If I take the slider for contrast all the way to the left, you can see that yes, the image has got flatter, but look at these colours in the out of focus background. They've gone very, very, very desaturated. If I take the contrast all the way up the other way, yes, we've turned the contrast up. In other words, we've made the black point and the white point come closer together. But look what it's done to the saturation of the colours in the image. They have got more saturated. Okay, so what do we need to do? We need to bring that back to minus 33 where it was. With a bit of luck. Yes, there we go. Alrighty, so what am I going to do? Let's come in and have a look at the image at 100%. It is still a bit dark. My highlights, which are here in the soft white underbelly fur of this grey squirrel, you can see that they are not hard over to the right. So there is a little bit of room there for an exposure lift. Okay, so let's go and do set exposure lift, and let's go and put a little bit more exposure in. Just want to leave a little gap at the end of the histogram. And now he's sort of as bright as we want him. But does it really look right? For a start off, you can start to see we've got a bit of noise creeping into the image, and we've still got a little bit of excess contrast. So what I'm actually going to do is add a little bit of texture, but then reduce clarity and dehaze. And for that, I'm just going to hit this little preset I've got here called TCD. And if I sort of don't apply it, you can see what the image looks like so far. If I hover over TCD, you'll see there's a bit of a difference. And what we've done is we've just increased the contrast in the very, very minuscule details, but we've reduced the amount of contrast in the medium-sized details and in the big-sized details with dehaze. In other words, the background. All right, but you can also see that the image is starting to go noisy. It was only shot at ISO 1000, but we've turned the exposure up, so we've increased the visibility of the base noise of the sensor in the D850, plus the amplification effect of adding that level of exposure. So there we go. So it's a bit noisy. So what we're going to do is go to detail, and we're going to go denoise, and I'm just going to run this through the standard default of 50 when it can decide to load up. Why it's been so weird about it, I don't know, but I'm just going to go and enhance and let it get on with the creation of the denoised DNG. Okay, so for the users of Raw Therapee and DarkTable, you know I mentioned in videos before the benefit, in my opinion, of using DxO's Deep Prime 3. And so I've already run this raw file through Deep Prime 3, and when we get into DarkTable and Raw Therapee, we will see the AI denoising, or dark frame denoising, that's been carried out on this file for use in DarkTable and Raw Therapee. But anyway, there we go. So in Lightroom, we've got rid of the noise. Now, a lot of people would be well impressed with that, and so they should be, because that's not taken really much in the way of effort to produce. And, you know, I mean, I'm quite happy with it. What I would have a tendency to do is to come into the masking and just get a brush, all right? What am I going to do? I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit, and I'm going to come into effects, and I'm going to increase the texture a little bit. And then all we're going to do is just paint in there just a little bit, and let's just come back to tone, and let's just bring those highlights down a little bit more, and let's just bring the whites down a little bit. There we go. So it's a very subtle adjustment, but I've now got more detail in my highlights in the place where I was losing them, which was here. All right, so that's that. So we'll go and click close. Alrighty. So what we're going to do is we're temporarily going to leave this image alone. And we're going to now head off over to Raw Therapee. So here we are in Raw Therapee. Now then, what am I going to do? I'm going to come to, you can see all we've got applied is mybase.pp3, which I've been over in many a video before with you, so I'm not going to repeat that. But I'm going to come to the color management tab, and I'm going to go to input profile, and I'm going to go custom, and I am going to go for a D850 camera flat. And when I get back into Lightroom, I might change that as well, from Adobe standard, which is what, or is it in Adobe color? I can't remember. But anyway, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. If you remind me, so don't forget, if we go back to Lightroom, shout out. So we're going to go open, and we're going to apply the tone curve. And straight away you can see that that has sort of put us roughly where we were with Lightroom. We're going to come to abstract profile, and we're going to go to custom, and I'm going to lift the slope up a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to lift the gamma up a little bit. Okie dokie, probably not that much. Lift the slope up a little bit more, and just try and strike a bit of a balance where the image is light enough and detailed enough. So what we'll do is we will come into it at 100%, and maybe we might just lift the gamma up a little bit more and lift the slope up a little bit more. Not quite that much. That's not looking too bad, but you can see we are beginning to develop noise in the eye and a little bit of noise in the background, though this noise itself wouldn't worry me because it wouldn't print. But there's a few remnants of noise and a few artifacts of noise that have been introduced by these adjustments. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on the thumbnail up here in the film strip, and I'm going to go to processing profile operations, copy, and then I'm going to come to this file here, which is, when it'll load up, you can see it's the Deep Prime EXD DNG. Alright, and I'm going to right click on the thumbnail in the film strip and go to processing profile operations, paste, and there we go. So we're back where we were with the raw file. However, you can now see I've got no noise. Alright, so that's looking quite cool. What are the whites looking like in the fur of the underbelly? They're looking alright. Now, as a process, a simple process in Raw Therapee, that is looking quite fine to me. However, what I would be tempted to do with this image now is send it over to Photoshop or over into GIMP for some localized dodging and burning, because the dodge and burn operations that I would want to do in here are basically little tiny combination exposure and fine detail contrast. In other words, the equivalent of texture in Lightroom. I'll be wanting to do little adjustments to sculpt and contour the squirrel's body, and the best and easiest and most intuitive way of doing that would actually be to use a brush. And so because the brush is missing, or is yet to be invented, I should say, for local adjustments, I can't be bothered doing it with spots, adjustment spots. Really could do with a brush mask facility in Raw Therapee. But, you know, I mean, if we compare that shot with the Lightroom shot, we're not really all that sort of far out, are we? Not really. The shot in Lightroom's looking a little bit more saturated in colour, and maybe just a couple of points more contrast in it. But, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not really worth talking about. We are fundamentally in the same place in Raw Therapee as we are in Lightroom. So now what we're going to do is go over to DarkTable. Yes, and here's the image open in DarkTable at its defaults. For me, the way I've shown, I have my default modules turned on and off. Alright, so what's the first thing we're going to do? I mean, if we look at the histogram, and from what we did in Raw Therapee and what we did in Lightroom, we know we've got to turn the exposure up. So let's go to exposure. And what I'm actually going to do is switch the histogram out just a little bit, so you can see this sort of histogram display. And I'm going to add exposure. But what I'm going to do before I do that is just activate my clipping indicators. So what I want to do is add exposure up to, but not quite up to, the point where I start to see red clipping indicators coming inside this white fur. And so we will keep adding exposure, and you can see we're not far off. There we go, there's the little red speckles. Let's go and have a look. Come on, there we go, little red speckles. So we need to pull back on that a little bit, don't we? And so let's pull back on there until they all sort of disappear. And if we come back out to a fit to screen view, you can see we haven't really turned the exposure up all that much, have we? And you can still see we've got some blue, if they show up on with the YouTube compression, we've got some little blue clipping indicators in this shadow between the tail and the back of the squirrel. So here we are. We're on the point of clipping in here, but we've got this big gap still in the histogram. So could we really add some more exposure? Yeah, we could, but we don't want to do that from the get-go, because we've got the magic button, haven't we, in DarkTable, and that is filmic. And what you have to remember about a digital image, the way the contrast is distributed within a digital image doesn't really match something that's akin to the human eye, because what used to be akin to the human eye was film. Yes, because film had a response curve very much equal to that of the human eye. And so this is why the filmic module, I really think that the guys at Raw Therapee ought to get hold of DarkTable and try and emulate this filmic RGB module, and the developers over at Adobe should get their act together and stop having tunnel vision and thinking they are the best thing since sliced bread, because here's the news, they're not. Let's go and hit the magic button, shall we? Oh, wait for it. There we go. But look at the gap on the right of the histogram. Woohoo. Now what we could do is we could lift that right up now. Look at this. How much exposure can we put? Well, how much exposure can we put in this? And we've still got no clipping in the highlights. How cool is that? This is why, you see, all the detail is still there. We'll do something about getting that under control in a minute. But, you know, I mean, gee whiz. But, again, let's have a look. You see how much noise we're developing in the eye. So let's come back to Lighttable. And here is our processed or processed so far raw file. Let's go to history stack and let's go to copy. And then let's go and click on said DNG from Deep Prime. Yeah, DxO Deep Prime. And let's make sure that's selected. Whoa, come on. That's selected and go to history stack and go paste. Let's now double click on there. Let's go and have a look at this at 100%. Oh, how sexy is that? How sexy is that? Right, now then, remember I said in Lightroom, when we were in Lightroom, that I might want to do a little bit of localized dodging and burning. And I then went into Raw Therapee and I said I would want to do some dodging and burning, but I can't do it inside Raw Therapee, not quickly and easily. It'd be too contrived trying to do it with local adjustment spots. So here's the thing. Over in Lightroom, I can stack adjustment brushes one on top of the other. I can sort of achieve the same thing pretty much in one pass in this particular piece of software, DarkTable, because I can go and add local contrast. And look what that's done to the squirrel. Forget what it's done to the background and the post. Just ignore that. Forget the fact that we've now got clipping in the highlights and clipping in the shadows there. Just forget it. Look at the body of the squirrel as I turn it off and I turn it back on. Let's go into it at a slightly larger magnification. That's it off. That's it on. Look at that. Now then, the thing is, that's going on across the whole image. What I'm going to do is to just leave everything at default, and I'm going to come into drawn masks, and I'm very simply going to get a brush, yeah, and I will make that brush somewhat bigger, just with the scroll wheel on my mouse, and I forget which one it is. I'll just increase the density of it a little bit, and then increase the feathering, not looks a little bit better, or decrease the feathering I should say, and we will just go and add a little bit just in there like that. Okay, so now you'll see, did you notice when I took my finger off the mouse and I sort of stopped brushing, the entire image sort of reverted to how it looked before, apart from where I actually scribbled this brush. And that's because that's what the mask looks like. Where the mask is yellow, you will see the adjustment. Where the mask is not yellow, there's black and white or whatever, you won't see the adjustment. So there you go. So what we're doing is we can, with brushes, we can now go and add another brush in this self-same module and just carry on that localized sort of dodge and burn exercise. So all we will do, go and click brush again, and I might come in at a slightly smaller brush size, and we will just draw or paint roughly around the face. This is very hard to do with a trackball. I should be on my Wacom tablet, but there you go. And so if I just uncheck that and then turn that local contrast module off and on, off and on, and you can see how we're building up the fundamental dodge and burn, if you like, with these multiple brushes. If we want to add more brushes, just come and click on there, and then come and click on there to add a brush, and let's go and sort of paint in there. But what I'm doing is I'm sort of staying away from the whites of the underbelly fur, and I'm staying away from the shadow underneath the tail. And I could have gone in with a bigger brush there, couldn't I? Just go on it, brush again, and whoops-a-daisy, and then that. But we'll just come in and add that there as well. And so unselect that, and there we go. And of course, if we wanted to add a little bit more, what we could do is come into here and go for a new instance of local contrast, and just say all I was trying to do was to increase the highlights, if you like, but not the shadows. So we'll take some of the shadows off, we'll increase the highlights, highlight contrast, rather like that, and just say we wanted that loop just around the eye and in one or two places here. So again, go for a brush on the mask, and we'll shrink that brush down, and we'll come and do over the eye, up there, down there, over there, and I'll leave it at that. That's the only place I want to see that build up. Or should I go and add another brush? I'll just brush it on just there as well. Okay, a little bit like that, and that'll do. And so we'll uncheck there, and we'll close the module. Okay, so if I take those two modules off, there's where we were before, and there's our final version of the image. Effectively dodged and burned with just two instances of the local contrast mask, or local contrast module I should say, and a couple of brush masks. Really easy. Say I wanted, I'm going to pick up my Wacom pen now, say I wanted to replicate exposure and just lift the exposure of the nose of the squirrel a little bit. I'll go and put another instance of the exposure module in, and all I'm going to do is just lift the exposure a little bit, and then we will come into drawn masks, and I will go and get a brush, and I will make that brush very much smaller, rather like that, and then I will just sort of paint in there. See, I can be a little bit more precise, but even using the Wacom, because of all the inhalers that I'm having to take, they do sort of make my hands shake a little bit, and so there we go. So all I've done is just lifted the brightness of the nose a little bit, and if we want to feather that, and we want to blur it a little bit, and just bring that feathering down a little tiny bit, and turn it off, turn it on. There we go. So that's a basic, very simple way of using local contrast and exposure module instances and brush masks to fundamentally dodge and burn on what would be a raw file had we not had to do denoise on it. Alright, so fundamentally what it is a DNG that we've brought in from DxO. Alrighty, so let us now minimize that. So that's our squirrel done from Gary's shot in Darktable, and very nice, I think it looks. Anyway, let's zoom out a little bit so we can see. We haven't brought the background saturation up or contrast up because that would just compete with the squirrel. The squirrel really stands out from the background. He really stands out from the post that he's sitting on, and both the post and the squirrel stand out quite well against the lighter background. So let's go back and refresh our memory of what it looked like in Raw Therapy when we took it as far as we could. And you can see Raw Therapy's got a bit more saturation going for it, but obviously we could take care of that. I actually like the very neutral way it's been processed in colour-wise inside of DarkTable. If we wanted to warm the image up a little bit, just by using the white balance as shot and then just moving it a couple of points, we can warm the image up globally just a little bit, and I don't think that looks too bad at all. And if we come back to Lightroom, there is the image, and you can tell now just by looking at that that there's some real weirdness going on with the colour, because in places it looks a little bit magenta, in places it looks a bit orange, and in places it looks a little bit blue. Yes, we can get round that by doing some more local adjustments, but you know, I mean, when we produced this image, we didn't think it looked too bad at all. Let's go back to the basics module and let us switch from Adobe Color to Camera Flat, which is what we used inside of Raw Therapy. And now we need a little bit more contrast in it, don't we? So let's go and add a little bit of contrast. Okay, he's not looking too bad there, but to me he still needs, let's go and put a little bit of clarity in that we took out with that sort of TCD operation there. Well, I don't know. It looks, the whole image now looks a little bit better from the colour point of view, but I think it needs a couple of points of green in it and a couple of points of yellow in it. Or does it need a couple of points of blue in it even? Very, very difficult to say. If you pick up a colour balancer and just sort of hover over here and look at the colour numbers, we're at 23, 23, 22. It's not far out of colour neutral in the sort of dark areas, but it's a little bit strange. So what I'm going to do is come to Colour Mixer, and I'm going to go to Saturation, and I'm just going to desaturate the oranges and the yellows just a little bit, and that to me sort of calmed the image down a little bit and made the image look a little bit more like we were getting out of Raw Therapy, and more specifically DarkTable. But I still think that the DarkTable rendition is overall much better, much more colour neutral, and got a little bit more punch to it. I mean, obviously in Lightroom we haven't made any attempt at doing any dodging and burning with local adjustments, so what we could do is basically come over to the masking panel now, and let's go and add a new mask. Let's call it a brush mask, and let's just add a little bit of exposure, and let's come into what we laughingly call effects, and we'll add a little bit of texture, which remember is contrast in the superfine detail areas. And we might have to play around with the exposure settings. If you wonder why I've got just one panel open at a time, that's because we can engage solo mode inside the masking panel. If we go to expand all, you can see, because we might want to make adjustments in both the effect panel and the tone panel. But let's just get the brush fired up first, and we can sort of lift up around the eye a a little bit like that, and lift up a little bit round there. Okay, that'll do for the first one. Let's turn off that mask temporarily. There you go. So that's before we did the adjustment. That's after. Let's go and create another one. I don't want to add to that one because I might want different values somewhere else. So we're going to get brush mask again, and I'm going to just sort of pull him down there, and I'm just going to add a little bit of exposure on the inside of the ears, just to and I might just add a little bit of texture in there as well. Okay, that's just added a little bit of three-dimensionality there. And then we might go and add another brush mask. And people might be saying, Andy, why don't you just go select subject? Yeah, okie dokie. No, thank you. We'll make the brush a little bit bigger, and we'll just come in and add a little bit of exposure to him where the strongest amount of light is catching him. Okay, rather like that. Do we want to add a little touch of texture to that? Maybe. And I'll keep this brush active, and we'll just come painting along there, sort of try and match the way the furs are running, and just sort of lift up there, rather like that. Notice I'm keeping away from the white fur or white underbelly fur, and I'm not going to eat into this shadow area very much. We'll just keep it like that. We'll go to fit to screen view, won't we? Come on, there we go. And then we'll turn the masks off, and then we'll turn them back on again. And so there you go, there's a bit of dodging and burning, a bit of crude dodging and burning, done inside of Lightroom. The actual process of dodging and burning with a brush is faster to achieve in Lightroom than it is in DarkTable. Don't forget, you can't do that at all in Raw Therapee, so you can make your mind up whether you think Raw Therapee is useful in that regard. For me personally, it isn't, because when I start on a load of images, I've got to work fairly quickly, and you can't work quickly doing dodging and burning in Raw Therapee, but you can do it very, very quickly in Lightroom, and pretty much nearly as quickly over in DarkTable. And so let's just go to a somewhat smaller view, and let's scoot DarkTable over there, and let's minimize that view of the left hand panels in Lightroom, and there you go. It needs going down a little bit. Come on, there you go. So, you know, I mean, that's Lightroom, that's DarkTable. The local adjustments in Lightroom, we might have to go and do a little bit more contrast if we want to approximate this result that we've got out of DarkTable. But for me, the result we've got out of DarkTable is actually the better one. How's that for wacky? Which you got to admit. There you go. I mean, I do actually prefer the DarkTable rendition for ease of production overall, and but of course, don't forget, you can't do this in DarkTable and get that level of denoising to the raw file. Don't forget the denoising that we've done in Lightroom and the denoising that we've done on this shot in DarkTable prior to processing, which was done with DxO Deep Prime 3, is not the same type of noise reduction that you might already be used to. because that is just into detail blurring. This is something completely different, which involves a bit of AI and also an extremely large database of what you call dark frames, which are frames shot with a camera where at various ISOs and shutter speeds and various sensor temperatures as well, if you do it properly, which is how we do it, what we do when we do astrophotography and use dark frame noise reduction. I don't think they take them at different temperatures, but they just match the dark frames up, because a dark frame contains all the blooming noise for ISO and the colour noise for the amount of time the shutter's open, or the sensors actually recording details, but it doesn't contain any of the light frame, the image, and the dark frame noise is actually removed or subtracted from the raw file. Yes, it is, and then what then happens is the AI bit takes over and sort of fills in the missing blanks. Yeah, so it is an entirely different type of noise reduction. The normal type of noise reduction that you've got in DarkTable just cannot compete with it by any stretch of the imagination. The only thing that I will do to this DarkTable image, which is something I forgot to do, is actually come in and sharpen it. Okay, so we will just go with default sharpening, but I'm going to add a parametric mask this time, and we're going to just come in on the L channel, and I'm going to remove it from the darkest blacks and then feather it in, and I'm going to remove it from the brightest whites and then feather it in as well. And if you want to see where that's working, that's here. And I suppose we could actually refine the mask a bit more by sort of taking it away from the background as much as possible, by adding a brush, but seriously, this video's gone on long enough and I can't be bothered. So there you go. And of course, don't forget, we can always turn the opacity down. Okay, so there you go. That's all the noise reduction, the sharpening off, and that's some of it put back on. Yeah, so there you go. The question was Lightroom, DarkTable, Raw Therapee. Which is better? I'm not saying, because I've got all three and I use all three of them. Okay, a good mechanic has more than one set of spanners. That's the analogy that I will use and I will stick with. And, you know, I mean, Lightroom users that don't have Raw Therapee and DarkTable are actually, in my opinion, bloody idiots. Yeah, I'll be brutally honest. They are, because, yes, they take a bit of learning. Hopefully my videos help you to learn how to do particular jobs in both Raw Therapee and DarkTable. But you know, have you got anything better to do than learn how to make your images look better? I don't think so. So anyway, there you go. Right, that's me, done. We've done this thing, and I'm going to shut up now. So thanks for putting up with me. Thanks for waiting around for me to actually produce a new video over here on YouTube. And until the next time, guys and gals, stay safe, stay well, keep taking the pictures. If you're a member over on my Patreon channel, thanks very much for your continued support in 2023. And I'll be back again. See you soon. Tooroo.